Welcome to today's episode of the Conscious Grief series. I am very excited to be with Suzanne Giesemann today, who is a military officer turned mystic, medium, and messenger of hope. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you so much. I'm just so grateful to be included in this wonderful event.
Wow, I am very honored to have you in it, so thank you. So I'm starting the series, each interview, with the question, what is grief? How do you define grief?
Well, I am going to give you a different answer than most people, I'm pretty sure. And we all know what grief is because there's not a single human being who doesn't experience it. But I'm going to give you an energetic explanation. My work as a medium has shown me that we are first and foremost energy beings. The body follows the pattern of energy that really is made up of our lifetime of experiences and thoughts and beliefs. And that field changes constantly, a field of energy. We create fields with others. Even with houses and places that we work, it's a field we become comfortable in it. Think about when you move to a new house or go to a hotel room, you're not comfortable, you don't resonate yet because you haven't merged your field and aligned with it. So what happens with grief is we have someone we love, and my definition of love is connection, a lack of separation. What happens with somebody we love is we create a field with them, a pattern of energy that creates a wholeness with us. Picture yourself with a partner. You feel like one being, but that's a pattern of energy. And suddenly, through death or divorce, that part of that field is gone. Mm-hmm. And you feel incomplete. That's why you say, I feel like there's a hole in my heart. So grief is when your sense of wholeness, and it is a true sense, is suddenly turned upside down because part of that wholeness is no longer there. The pattern of your very being has changed. And so grief lasts until you adjust to that change in the pattern and you create new patterns of being. So you can't just get rid of it. It's an energetic shift that takes place over time. And it's so unsettling because we feel incomplete. But this is such a long answer, but this was just given to me as I was contemplating this on a walk about an hour ago. And my poor husband, I'm walking around going like this because my guides are downloading this new way of seeing grief. And if we can understand that life continues across the veil, this is the greatest message of mediumship, then we simply form a new pattern of being with the one who's no longer here. So that's the exciting part. That's my message of hope, that this pattern here in the physical world may change, but we just create a new one because they are also still energetic beings.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. And can I ask about your personal story? Like, what led you to doing the work that you do now?
Yes, I had, in my last job in the Navy, I was the aide to the top of the United States military, the head of the United States military, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And I was with him on September 11th when our building, the Pentagon, was attacked. And that showed me life is too short. You've got to live your dreams. So I retired from the Navy and basically ran away from all the tragedy and went sailing, only to discover, sailing with my husband across the ocean, around the Mediterranean, only to discover you can't run away from life lessons. And 9/11 was an up close and personal tragedy for me, but nothing like the family tragedy that ensued when my 27-year-old stepdaughter, a sergeant in the Marine Corps, was killed by lightning strike. And she was 6 months pregnant at the time. So it was a double loss for our family. And suddenly I knew what up close and personal grief felt like. So I went seeking answers and discovered that there is a whole greater reality, that Susan is not really dead and gone. And I won't go into all the details, but discovered that not only can I connect with Susan, but other people's loved ones with really wonderful clarity and great evidence that shows that they are still very much with us.
Mm-hmm. And I watched your story, the documentary, so I was very inspired by a lot of people will doubt mediumship, and you come from this military background and highlighting your personality as someone with real integrity. And so for people who might be very skeptical about mediumship, you do a lot of evidential work. Could you speak a little bit to people who might feel doubtful?
Oh, yes. And we have every right to be doubtful, because it's very easy to imagine things out of our grief. We can be gullible to those who might take advantage of us. So for multiple reasons, mediumship has taken on a bad name in some circles. But when you find a good evidence-based medium that I was blessed to find when we were seeking answers with Susan, you can't deny that your loved one is with you, because the evidence speaks for itself. And what do I mean by that? Things that the medium couldn't possibly know. There's a young woman here who passed in her 20s. I suddenly have a tingly electrical feeling running up and down me. And she wants to show you a little baby boy who's with her, who you haven't met yet. Ooh, anybody else just get goosebumps? That was the evidence, just some of it, that came through from a medium who didn't have my last name, knew nothing about me. And oh, by the way, that young woman was wearing a brown uniform and standing in front of my husband saying, "Daddy, daddy, daddy." So that's evidence that rocked our world. And since then, well, I could fill probably a week nonstop sharing the evidence from my thousands of readings over the years since then. That leaves no doubt in my mind there's a greater reality, but it's something that one has to experience for themselves to really change your world.
Mm-hmm. Also, I was thinking about, do you believe in reincarnation?
I know it's a fact simply from the preponderance of the evidence. We look so much to science, and that's one way of proving things at the physical level, but that stops at objective reality. And the non-physical world is subjective reality, which is why we need that personal experience. The preponderance of the evidence is valid in a court of law, so it works for me as far as things I can't prove objectively. And there has been so much research in addition to what I've been told by so many souls across the veil, that we do come back and get to work on issues that will help our greater soul have the fullness of experiencing all that life has to offer.
So another question I'm curious about, do you think that, for example, my mother, this is just something I think about, like my mother and father have crossed over onto the other side, and then sometimes I look at my dog or one of my sister's children and I think, is there a piece of their soul in them? Do you think the soul or the consciousness, if you like, can be divided up?
What happens with consciousness is it's always evolving higher to greater levels of awareness. And to reincarnate as an animal would be a backward step in evolution. There are animal souls that evolve, but yes, a loved one, part of their greater soul, we can call it an oversoul, could very well reincarnate within the same soul family again. But the important point is not to think of it as all or nothing. I, as a medium, could still tap into your mother or your grandmother, because it's only a part of the oversoul that your mother would be part of that reincarnates. It's like a deck of cards as an oversoul, and you play a different hand with different issues to work on to complete that wholeness.
Amazing. I've always been curious about that, and how you've answered it. It was the feeling that I had. So thank you for that. And your work as a medium, you must be looking at grief all the time. Do you feel that you're a conduit for grief to help people get deeper into their grief and to, move through it?
The work of a medium is multifaceted. The number one goal of mediumship is to show that there is a greater reality, that life is eternal, and truly love doesn't die with the body. So that's part one. Part two is definitely to help people through their grief. People feel lost when they feel that their loved one is completely gone, that interaction that they had with them, that loving connection will never be experienced again. And to show someone through the evidence, through a real-time interactive conversation with their loved one who talks about things going on right now in their loved one's life here, to do that gives people hope that not only will I see them face to face when I cross the veil again, but I can, as I said before, establish a new relationship with them now. Mm-hmm. They'll send you signs, you can talk to them, they'll put insights into your mind, open your heart with bursts of love. It's comfort beyond what I knew for the first part of my life. And to give that kind of comfort and reassurance to others is a real blessing in this work.
It really is. And like your title of being the messenger of hope really expresses that.
Yes, because people in grief are hopeless. We're not only grieving the physical loss, but all the things we thought we would be doing going forward. And when I get evidence from people across the veil, I'm just being reminded of bringing through a father of a man here. And the father showed me, I know that you're having a baby, and I know that it's a boy. And then 9 months later, he drops in on me, clinking glasses, celebrating, just dropped in on me. And I called the man. I said, your dad says he knows you had that baby, and he knows you gave it his middle name, and he knows you put it on a billboard in New York City. And all of that was absolutely accurate. That gives us cause for hope, cause for celebration, really, that people despair because they grieve. Now my dad won't see me when I have a child, won't be there when my daughter walks down the aisle, will miss out on my children's graduation. No, they won't. They attend their own funerals and tell me about the exact things people put in the coffin, because they're here. It's something that I'm grateful to you and all the others who are trying to get the word out to people, because for so long we didn't really know the fullness of our existence across the veil.
Absolutely. And I was always fascinated but afraid. And I was raised in a Christian family, and we were told that was the work of the devil, to contact a medium or believe in astrology. But
I wasn't told that. I was raised in a family with no formal religion, so I picked up my spiritual beliefs through experience. And there's a huge difference between being told what to believe and what to do versus flowing with life and listening to your heart. And that's when people get older and they start asking questions and it conflicts with what people told them. That angst, that fear is a driving force to have your own experience, isn't it?
It really is. And exactly, I think when I got to a pressure point in my life and I decided to see a therapist, and she really encouraged me to explore these things, whatever, I wanted, rather than being in this sort of rigid way. And it was reminding me, when I finally had my first reading with a medium, it was like having a conversation with my parents. And she like exactly as you did, she said words which you would never have been able to have, very unusual things which depicted like, oh, that's definitely them. But one of the things she said our dog was with my mum in the reading. She goes, oh, there's a little dog, and she said, and your mum's telling me to say, oh, it's much better, they don't need feeding up here. It was so funny, the conversation, because the things that my parents were saying, their sense of humor was coming across.
Yes. And if they didn't have a sense of humor, they most likely will show themselves that same way in a reading. That's one of the most evidential parts in a reading, is when you can capture that person's essence. I tell all of my students, because I teach mediumship, the test of a good reading, and so for anybody listening who is seeking a reading, the test of a good reading is, do you leave and say, that was my loved one, that was them? I've left quite a few readings when I've had them before I learned about evidential mediumship, and I've said, I don't know, I'm not convinced. And it's my goal, anytime I do a reading and anytime I teach students, make sure you are feeling, am I showing them they're right here? Or is there a reason for them to have that feeling? That's my loved one. If not, let's call this off, because that's not doing this work with integrity.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I can identify with that. There have been some that have been a little more ambiguous, that I've been like, was that something my mum would have said, wasn't it?
And in all fairness to any medium out there, there are some times when that connection just isn't as strong as we'd like a cell phone signal. You're just trying to get the right 5 bars for a reading. And those are the times when I will call it off, or just say, we're not having a real good connection today. But if you set the bar high and set the intention that every reading will be so clear that the loved one will say, that's my sweetheart, or my mom, or my dad, or my child, the spirit world wants nothing more than for us to know that, and they'll help as much as they can.
And actually, to that question, for people that have really no previous experience of connecting with our loved ones who have crossed over, are there things that you could ask spirit to show you for signs?
Definitely. There are 2 parts to this question, though. In a reading, I would ask people not to ask for specific pieces of information, because the medium and the person across the veil are going to have a certain resonance, and every thought and every visual is its own signal, a frequency. And if the medium can't tune into what the loved one's trying to say, you're not going to get your specific sign, and you may leave disappointed and think that it wasn't an actual connection. So in a reading, go into that open-minded and look for the big picture. Did that feel like, and was the evidence that came through your loved one's information? Did the messages ring true as well? So we don't just want evidence, we want messages from the heart that sound like things they would say, like the example you gave. But as far as asking for signs between you and your loved ones who've passed, absolutely do that. I just did a video called You Can Connect Across the Veil, and how to ask for signs. It's a big, long topic, but you can ask for specific signs and, show me this, if I can trust that feeling I just had that you were right here. Show me this specific thing in the next couple days, and they'll do it if they can.
I think it is a very exciting time that we're in, because the world is changing so rapidly, and our consciousness is rising, could you say, or changing. And I wonder if the work of people like yourself is going to become more mainstream, and the other thing I was thinking of is, as our consciousness develops, will more and more people be able to connect?
Yes, and yes. Yes to both questions. There's no doubt, and the internet is facilitating that. And really what we're seeing is a lessening of fear. And that's the biggest problem. People are afraid of being made fools of, rightfully so. They have outdated religious beliefs, and religion still has a wonderful role to play in this world, but we have to look at where people are trying to control our own thoughts. So we can still embrace this within the context of all religions, because the basic underlying theme of all religions is love is the answer, and the golden rule. It's common on all religions. So as we come to find out that if you have ethical mediumship, we mediums are really trying to show you that love never dies and that healing can take place from this, more and more people will embrace it. And certainly our own consciousness individually is evolving. So the more we clear out the blocks within us, the fears, the human only thinking, because we are souls now, then we naturally open up to what is a natural ability for everyone. I hadn't said that to this point, but here I spent the first 4.5 decades of my life not knowing there was a greater reality, never saw spirits, never connected with a soul across the veil, and now connect daily with great clarity. Because once you realize you're a soul and you understand how easy it is to follow simple processes to connect, and that's it. You can learn to connect because it's natural and innate to us as souls in human bodies. Then more and more people will be doing it and won't need to turn to others for what is available right here within.
Yeah. It's so fascinating to me as well, because a lot of people come from America to England.
Yes.
Study. Is that right? For me,
yeah, I did.
You did, yeah.
Oh,
in Stansted.
Yeah, twice. The Arthur Findlay College is world renowned for training people in evidence-based mediumship. And I remember taking a taxi from the Stansted airport to Arthur Findlay College, and the man said, "Oh, you mean Spooks College?" That was many years ago, 2009. And they may still refer to it that, the Harry Potter school out there in Stansted, England. But it's because that school over the decades has focused on evidence-based mediumship. So you learn how to get great evidence along with accurate, clear messages, find that perfect balance, and you can really help people heal.
Thank you. And you were talking a bit about religions just then, and how would you define God as you refer to God?
The first thing I would do is change the word, because there's so much meaning attributed to it over the years that tends to put us in a box and see God as a figure, a person. We are created in the image of God, but it's as pure awareness. When we can get beyond our story, pretend you suddenly had amnesia, you don't remember anything about who you are, what would still remain is, I am aware of being. And God, spirit, consciousness, source is this awareness that's looking through a pair of eyes right now, and also looking through that pair of eyes right now. And in seeing this awareness in each other, that's love. That's connection. That's God. Awareness is this infinite field of intelligence and creativity from which all experience arises. I could go on and on and on, but it's so much more than what we've been taught. And the beautiful part is we can experience ourselves as expressions of this awareness through meditation, which is also the key to learning to connect with our loved ones who have passed. So I feel so fortunate to be able to teach this to people and get feedback all the time, how learning to connect with our loved ones has this incredible silver lining that we have so many more expanded experiences in awareness. We grow, we learn to love each other more, we find freedom. And it's just a beautiful journey that we're all on.
It truly, truly is. And I often think about when they tell us we use such a small part of our brain, and that there's this whole other part of our brain that we're not activating, and how that
Well, how about, I mean, I just get completely away from the brain because I talk daily to people who no longer have a brain. So
True.
what if we use our soul instead? And the bridge is the heart to that. I completely agree with you brain-wise in the physical form, but I don't even focus on the brain. The brain is the biggest detriment to this work.
Mhm.
It's a filter to the awareness that is right here, right now. And it holds on to patterns. Neuroplasticity is a very real thing. To change those patterns and think outside the box, that's when we really tune into beautiful evidence and experiences that are happening all around us. But because of this filter, we miss them.
This is very, very true. And in your experience, what do you feel are the gifts of grief?
Oh, goodness. I know you're interviewing the wonderful, some board members of Helping Parents Heal, and they have a page on their website about the silver lining of grief. When we are in the throes of grief, we can't think that anything possibly good can come of that. And you will find as you go through this journey that it's actually one of the greatest gifts, because the pain is so bad, we start seeking answers. And in so doing, we find what I just talked about, that we are souls. We're so much more than these bodies, that we are here for a purpose. When we know that our loved one hasn't died, it causes us to go beyond our old belief system, to seek new ways of being. It gives us greater compassion for others who are suffering. I could go on, but that's what you're helping to do with this summit.
I know it's initially you don't feel that there are gifts in the grief, like you were saying, but I think the depth and the wisdom and the compassion are really real things that come out of it. And that's beautiful. And the connection as well, because it's such a deep and rich subject. And you can connect with other people who've been through the similar thing. And that is hugely beneficial, inspiring, healing.
Yes, and we learn tools that take us to a higher place. Gratitude is one of the quickest ways to align with our true nature. And I remember when my mother passed, feeling that grief, even though I am a medium and I knew she was fine, I knew we would be able to connect, but that grief wells up. And I learned that just feeling it and saying, that's love, turned that completely around. We still grieve, but then I feel this rush of gratitude that I even had that experience of loving that much. So becoming aware of one's thoughts is hugely important at any time in our life. Aware of how we're stuck in those patterns. So if you're stuck in grief, we can go right back to the beginning of this interview, that grief is an undoing of a pattern, but a creating of a new one is what takes us out of the grief. So becoming aware of your thoughts at all times, you can say, oh, there's a pattern that's still here, but how can I create a new positive relationship and new patterns in my life, not to replace what I had, but to just create a new way of being that's more healthy.
Absolutely. And I was also wanted to mention to the people that are listening to this that you have gifted your No Fault video on YouTube, and that you talk a lot about being the neutral observer, if you like.
Yes.
And how meditation can really help us stay in that. We are human and we are going to have all of these feelings.
We need to.
We need to, and that's part of our human experience. And so often we try and numb out, like you were saying in the video, through eating, which I've done a lot of in my life, or whatever we choose, the busyness, the eating, the drinking, to try and stop the feelings, because we don't want to feel the negative thing.
Exactly.
We want to feel pleasure and good, but the more we become conscious, if you like, then the more that we won't be afraid of the difficult feelings.
What we're always seeking is that sense of wholeness. And the bottom line is, no matter what is going on in this human life, once you realize there's a greater reality, this is the greatest fringe benefit, silver lining of mediumship, then you realize, and mysticism, spirituality, you realize you are already whole and complete at your most essential nature. So that no fault process, it's a 7-step process using the acronym no fault, gives you a way of honoring whatever you're experiencing in the moment that makes you want to turn to something more destructive, finding that pleasure, and to find the contentment that's always here, because you find that wholeness. And it just makes me want to right now just in that process, sometimes I literally just comfort myself and say, you are safe. You're safe, because that feeling of lack, the absence of that sense of wholeness when somebody dies and is no longer here, puts us in a panic. But if you can comfort yourself knowing in the back of your mind, they're still here. I don't actually need them present with me. If they were on a vacation, I'd be a little uneasy, but I'd know I'm okay. And you just comfort yourself and say, you're safe. It's a beautiful thing. And that's my dream for everybody, my wish that everybody comes to find that awareness. You are already whole.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much, Suzanne. I think that brings us to a perfect place of conclusion. And I wanted to also say to what you had just been saying, that I've been receiving your daily emails, which also feel like this. Yeah. And so I really encourage anyone to sign up to Suzanne's emails, because they are, you do a short message each day, and they are very uplifting. They're very supportive. I've also been reading them at times at the end of my yoga classes.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah.
Yes, that can be found at dailyway.org. Yeah, they're channeled from the spirit world. So you're obviously feeling that higher energy, and that's the goal.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And I'm so grateful for all the work that you put into the world. I'm really, truly inspired and amazed by how much you do. And I'm very grateful that you replied and we have done this interview. So thank you very, very, very much.
It's a blessing, as are you. Thank you.